does the audio, does the volume feel correct? Is it the right sound?
Can you give
Thank
us
you,
a thumbs up
Joanna.
in your video if you can hear us okay?
Yeah, okay, great.
Excellent. All right, well, Alice, again, thank you so much for doing this. And I do have to read your bio from paper because I will mess it up and that's not fair to you. So Alice Lichtenstein graduated from Brown University and received her Master of Fine Arts from Boston University. She received a New York Foundation of the Arts grant in fiction and has twice been a fellow of, at the MacDowell Colony. MacDowell? Did I say that right?
Yep, you did.
Okay. Her novel, The Crime of Being, was nominated for, and this is super impressive, a 2020 Pulitzer Prize in Fiction and has received many accolades. Her previous novels, including The Genius of the World, which came out in 2000, and Lost, which came out in 2010. Lost was a finalist for the International IMPAC Dublin Literary Award. Lichtenstein's,
wow. Well done.
Thank you. Lichtenstein's short stories have been nominated for Pushcart Prize Awards. Her recent work includes Boob Song and Revision, which was a narrative magazine story of the week. Alice lives here in Oneonta, where she teaches creative writing at Hartwick College and in Surrey, Maine. Alice, thank you so much.
Thank you.
So I think we're going to start tonight off with a little reading that she is going to do from the book. We're here reading The Crime of Being. Very exciting. All right, Alice, take it away.
Okay, so again, I really want to thank everyone for showing up. This is just a great thrill for me and a real honor. When I give readings in person, I always invite people to close their eyes when they're listening to prose. I have no idea how that works in the Zoom world, whether or not that's still something helpful or not, but give it a whirl. That's the way I listen to prose. Just a suggestion. And since you're on mute, I won't hear if you start snoring, so it's really not as important as it would be if we were in person. Okay, I'm just going to read the first very brief section of the novel. It's no more than 4 pages, but I'd like to start with the epigraphs, which I love so much. So it'll all be self-evident. I'm going to minimize you, but I think you'll still see me. There we go. Tell us what moves at the margin, what it is to have no home in this place, to be set adrift from the one you knew, what it is to live at the edge of towns that cannot bear your company. Toni Morrison. To insist on being who we are is a political act. Carl Phillips. Good Friday. They have the day off from school, so they're hanging out in Town Park, he and Woody and Sam and Ryan, all his buds from track, when the Chevy rolls through the gate. The gate isn't really a gate. It's 2 stone pillars topped with nasty-looking eagles, wings spread, beaks open like they're about to grab something. The park is small, with perfect grass, almost as perfect as the grass at the golf course where his dad works. It's the park where Gunther and his friends and most of the kids from the high school like to hang, because it's perfect for cruising. An asphalt drive loops the center of the park and exits through the same gate. Whenever someone drives through, everyone stops what they're doing, even if it's nothing, to check out who it is. When the Chevy pulls in, everybody looks, not just because the color of the pickup is so red, lipstick red, cherry red, and so shiny, the sun glinting off patches still slick from the self-wash, but because everybody knows whose truck it is, Sean Sr.'s, and who's driving it, Shawnee Pedrushki. And their curiosity is roused because everybody knows that Pedrushki, though 17, doesn't have a license. He's failed parallel parking twice, that he can't be driving legally without a licensed adult, and that Sean Sr. anyhow has forbidden his son to drive unless he pulls all A's this semester. And so far he's failing chem. That's how it is in this town. Everybody knows everybody's business. What car you drive and what grades you get are the least of it. Gunther and his friends get to their feet, begin to saunter toward the truck that's bucked a curb in a squealing stop across the grass from them. They plan some joshing to the effect that no wonder Pedrushki don't have a license. He's still got to learn to park. When they rise, they feel it's almost a right, a responsibility to greet the man, to needle him, but also to convey a measure of admiration for his cunning, his guts. Swipe your dad's truck, wax it, drive it without a license in daylight. They are swaggering a bit, grinning, but a little nervous too. In the end, they plan to bestow their collective thumbs up. But who is this new version of Pedrushki? Usually a quiet kid, a loner dude, who isn't exactly known for breaking the rules. Sam and Ryan lead the way, Gunther and his best friend Woody back a few steps. Ryan reaches the driver's door first. Sam closes in on the other side of the truck. Then Pedrushki's rolling down the window to Ryan's hey, pitched somewhere between friendly and not. Gunther and Woody, coming up slow, trailing their fingers along the side of the newly waxed truck as though it were satin. Then Pedrushki ducking, grabbing something off the seat. Ryan leaping backward like he's been slapped. Sam stumbling, his arms flying up. He shouts, "Dude's got a gun!" How does Gunther know to run? One look at Pedrushki raising the .22 as he opens the driver's door, his eyeballs swimming into the crosshairs of the scope that's aimed right at him. And Gunther knows it's not show and tell. He knows he's going to die if he doesn't get moving. His brain is running the race of its life as he flies across the park, through the gates, across Main, left to Tilden. He's running for the safest cover he can think of, the police station, 6 blocks away, running until his feet go numb, running on nothing, his stomach kinked, his breathing hard. Right on his heels, Pedrushki screaming, "I'm gonna kill you!" Cars squealing, people shouting. He gets a sense the world has pulled up, but he's still moving. Pounding up the steps of the police station, he reaches the entryway, yanks hard on the brass door handles. The doors don't budge. He yanks again, screaming, "Help!" Through the heavy glass doors, he can see cops talking to cops, secretaries sitting at screens. "Help!" he screams again. He doesn't see the white buzzer to the right of the double doors. He doesn't see the intercom perched like an old transistor above it. Seconds he has, less, and now he has nowhere to hide, nothing to do but roll up in a ball, make himself small as he can in the corner. He can hear Pedrushki's sneakers slapping the pavement, his choking breaths, his garbled slurs, "You're a dead man." And he believes him, his mind roiling with fear and yet scrambling for a plan. He raises his head, forces himself to look up at the kid who's pointing the rifle right at him, so close he can taste the smell of metal in the roof of his mouth, can hear the click of the trigger as the barrel lifts, catching the light. Gunther kicks out hard at Petrushki's shin. He pitches his water bottle with no time to aim. The blast of the gun spikes his head, splits it. His left arm is on fire. That's it, he thinks. I'm dead. Petrushki aims the rifle again. But this time, the doors are opening. The policemen are screaming. They point their guns at Petrushki, who hesitates, then runs, fleeing back the way he came. "Hold it!" the policemen shout. And Petrushki drops to his knees on the sidewalk. "I want to die," he says. "Let me die." Drop the gun. Gunther sees it all. He sees Petrushki prop the .22 on the sidewalk, rest his throat on the tip of the barrel. "No!" the officers shout, and he shouts too, "No!" The rifle fires. Petrushki's down, writhing and moaning and holding his jaw. Police sirens explode out of nowhere. The sound bleeds into the ringing in Gunther's ears and drowns out all others. In minutes, men are lifting Gunther, strapping him into a narrow cot that they slide swiftly into the back of the ambulance. Then the men take their seats in the front. Others are waiting for him inside, blue uniforms and blurred faces. His arm is on fire, his head screaming. "Get my mom," he bleats, "my mom and my dad." Crouched near his shoulder is a woman with a long blonde braid that sweeps his cheek as she presses her pale fingers to the side of his throat. "Don't worry, hon," she says. "We're getting them. They'll be here as soon as possible." He closes his eyes. Hot tears flood his lids, sliding across his cheekbones, finding the corners of his mouth, the wells of his ears. His body starts shaking. "Easy there," someone says. "It's okay." And someone else shoots something into his good arm. "This will help." And almost instantly, a sleepy high begins to suck the fear right out of his body. He's so grateful to be inside the ambulance, to be wrapped tight in this blanket, to be strapped tight to this bed, people telling him over and over they're going to keep him safe. Pagers are beeping, and radios are speaking like robots, and the ambulance is accelerating faster and faster. The G-forces press down on his body, his hips and his stomach, and the tops of his thighs. Gunther closes his eyes. His eyeballs feel heavy in their sockets, so heavy they might drop out the back of his skull. He sighs. This might be his own personal spaceship, shuttling him off to the moon.
I forgot how intense that was. And you
Me
reading
too.
it, like, I mean, if they do an audiobook, I definitely think you should do it. I just got caught up in that. Wow. I feel like I can't even.
It takes me a moment to recover, and I wrote it.
Just a moment to transition. So bear with me. I'm not Barbara Walters. I'm a humble librarian. So I am not the best interviewer, but I'm going to give it a good shot. So what inspired you to tell this story?
Well, I think probably many of the people listening and watching this interview may be from this area. And now about 9 years ago, there was in fact a hate crime that in some aspects resembles the one that I portray in the novel. I was not only deeply horrified and shocked at the time that a hate crime was perpetrated in Cooperstown, which was the nearby town. But over time, I was fascinated by how a community responds to having such a horrific event take place in the community. And I should say, in a community that is very, very largely white.
You did, of course, just talk about community. What made you write from various perspectives instead of having a single narrator or character tell the story?
I love that question. Well, as a novelist, I must say I have a goal in life, which is to write a novel from one point of view. But I seem to really feel on some deep core level that whatever the underlying truth of human experience, that fiction can, I think, help us understand, is through many different points of view. So I really approach every story that I've told so far. I've just felt at some sort of almost like ethical level that I have to deeply understand and have some compassion for every one of my stories, because everyone, and I mean, to some people it sounds ridiculous because it's fiction, but everyone is human. Okay, they're fictional humans, but that's what I feel. So in this story, there's so many very important different ways of looking at the story. I felt that I had to explore what on some level is a universal experience of suffering.
While I was reading the book, it made sense that you would tell it from different perspectives, because when an incident happens, it just doesn't happen to the victim. It happens to a number of people. So speaking for myself, I really enjoyed, all the different characters and all the little insights. And what was the process for writing all those different characters? Like, do you map it out? Was it easy to go from one to another? How did you choose these people? Please talk many minutes about this.
Well, I don't want to put everyone to sleep, so I won't speak many minutes. I'll just, I'll try to keep it brief. But again, wonderful question. So in my mind, I'm a fast writer. If you could cut to my agent right now, she'd be dying and either laughing or groaning, because I seem to take at least 5 years to write a novel, and more like 8. So in my mind, because I do have a disciplined writing process, and I'm writing these 4 hours, 5 days a week, I'm at it. And the story and the narrative time and novel time is just always filled with energy and moving at a pace. I'm always very surprised to see how long it's taken me to create, the final novel. And in this case, believe it or not, this novel started out in first person. I think it had even more characters it was a mess, a complete mess. I mean, total mess. And some reading it may say it still is, but I hope not, because it worked very hard to not, create a mess. But I guess gave myself permission and to explore every voice that felt essential to me. And I have to say that I particularly enjoy writing characters who have superficially nothing to do with me, that don't necessarily, no one would recognize me in those characters. But I often tell my students, please read Richard III, Shakespeare. Richard III, as I'm sure you know, is one of the great villains of all time. Well, and yet, by the end of Richard III, well, at least I speak for myself, I can totally identify with Richard III. Who hasn't been Richard III at one point in their life? Now, it might have just been when you weren't allowed to sit at the popular kids' table in high school, which did happen to me, of course. But that feeling that no matter what the outward appearance is, and even some of the actions that are manifesting in the world is evil, there's a human being in there. And so it's very important to write characters that in my novel who are in some respects performing, or are certainly performing evil acts. But I want to understand that. That's a huge, interesting challenge for me. Yeah.
Sure. How did you organize, or how did you switch between voices? Like, how did you go from Sean Sr. to just really anybody else? Like, how
did I go from being Alice to being Sean Sr.? There's a well, I suspect an undiagnosed personality disorder, but no. How does one do it? Technically speaking, it is the woo-woo of being a writer. You're writing along and you hear another voice and you feel confident that that voice needs to speak. And so you listen to it and you start working on it. And one of the refrains that I use in my teaching, most important thing I think I can ever tell my students is give yourself permission. So once you give yourself permission, you're kind of opening a portal in your imagination and in your compassion. And if your characters are really convinced that that you're not going to judge them outright, they will speak to you. If you try to write about your terrible childhood and you're still very, very angry at your parents, those characters usually don't speak. You have to get to a certain place where you can, where the characters feel safe. And I know that sounds strange, but that's the truth.
No, of course. This is a selfish question. I'm always so interested in the process of writing a book. So what did writing this book look like? What was the general process from start to finish? And was it different from your other books that you've published?
Oh, you have the humble librarian asks such wonderful questions.
Thank you.
I wish everyone could see my office, which is just stacked with papers and files, and I haven't burned all the drafts yet, which are thousands and thousands of pages. So, how do you create this novel? How did I do it? Gosh, it's a little bit like childbirth. You're complete blank afterwards. Like I have no memory of how this happened. Not quite. How did I do it? I wish I would. I mean, I have friends, novelists, wonderful novelists who are very organized, and they do have, whiteboards with characters and backstories and lots of post-it notes. And I just envy those people, and there are people who map out the chronology, and there are people who, you know, have all kinds of wonderful ways of going about it. I think because I don't have those things is why it takes so long. But for me, finding that organic structure takes a long, long time. So I usually start just with the voices, just with characters telling me about their experience. Um, I also, just for my own sanity, relative sanity, um, like to hang things on scenes. If I have scenes, then I'm somewhat reassured that I also have time. And it helps to have a sense of time in a novel. So in Lost, my second novel, the entire novel took place over one weekend. So that was very interesting for me as in terms of working a narrative, compression, how you move a story. But I also felt sort of deeply reassured. Well, at some point I'm going to get to the last day of the weekend and the novel's going to be over. You know, so if you're working Friday through Sunday, you know you're going to finish your novel at some point. This novel had changed its chronology various times, and I finally did do a summer, and I had a very important I don't know, subtext, I suppose would be the fancy word for it, of wanting it to take place over these specific spiritual holidays, Good Friday, Maundy Thursday, Holy Saturday, sorry, and Easter. And so there were some other things that started to work into it. I'm not sure if that's an answer to the question, but I tried.
Me, thanks. What was the hardest part of writing this book?
Well, it was hard in many ways. You know, the book, it's, I think I continually had to give myself permission, which is something I have to do no matter what I'm writing, frankly. But I think this book, which has an African American character, I had to, on that particular level, had to give myself permission to write from a point of view that was not mine racially. So, and there's of course a lot of these days there's a faction that really believes that's not permissible. And so I really have to test my own deepest conviction, which is you don't censor your imagination. That to me is essentially soul death. That as a writer, if I ever knowingly censored a creative impulse, a creative drive, I might as well hang it up. I mean, to me, that's it. You know, so you do what you need to do, and if people object, they object. That's their right. You know, but you only get one lifetime, as far as I know, and as a writer, you have to give yourself permission to create.
That was a wonderful answer. Were there any easy parts of writing this book?
Yes. No. Actually, I just loved writing about pit bulls.
I didn't know about blue pit bulls because they're just
neither
so
did I
cute.
until I made it
And I was
up.
like, oh.
No, I somehow knew that Joanne had raised pit bulls. I just knew that somehow. But then when I started researching pit bulls, I learned about the blue-nosed pit bull and the whole genetic thing. And oh my God, you know, this kind of thing happens to you as a writer. You know, you get these sort of gifts from God, we call them, when sudden, or synchronicity on steroids or something. But all of a sudden, oh my God, it has a genetic component, and we've got a Nazi. I mean, you know, hey, it doesn't get better than that, right? So, but that's totally by accident, or you know, a divine accident. But I did love researching the pit bull, and I I love pit. I mean, I love pit bulls. No, I came to love pit bulls because I have a dog that isn't a pit bull. But in dog training, there's a wonderful woman who rescues pit bulls, and these lovely, lovely dogs. And I realized that they were a much maligned dog breed. And so it was, again, you know, all these little ironies, but it was kind of fun to have Joanne rescuing the much maligned pit bull. Yeah.
Hmm.
That's the only fun I got, okay? No.
Sure. Did you do any other type of research? Like, did you look into anything else?
Oh,
I love
oh,
research so
oh,
hard. So, like, that would be
so,
my favorite part.
oh, well, you know, it's interesting. So my process on a different level, my process is that I allow myself to invent as much as possible. And then, of course, I have to go back and research things. So a lot of things you have sort of, I have gut instincts about the character, just things manifest. And so, but then I have to research them to see if there's any actual validity to anything on my gut level. So once I start researching, not only do I love learning stuff, but that's when some of the richer metaphors come out. So, well, I mean, in my mind, richer metaphors. So, for instance, I knew that Bruce was going to be a failed PhD, and his specialty was going to be trees, and he's working on a golf course. But it wasn't until I actually started researching elm disease that I learned all these, you know, I mean, they're just such rich metaphors in a diseased tree, you know, and then that the black, you know, the maple, the black spot on the maples, you know, the tar is infecting the trees on the golf course that he works on, and you know, on and on. I mean, every single part that's at all technical is completely research. Oh, I loved, for instance, there's a point where Shawnee's the door is locked from the inside, and then the police actually take out the whole door fixture or whatever it's called. Anyway, I learned all about how to pick locks, which I really wanted to use, but I mean, you know, but I learned how to actually, if I ever am locked into a bathroom, I now know how to get out, thanks to the research for the book. You know, it's
Andy.
endlessly fun in that way. Yeah, yeah. I know a lot more about rifles than I did before I wrote this book. Yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, every bit of it is research, is accurate. You have to do that. Yeah.
Well, what made you choose a 22?
Because I consulted with gun experts who said that this is the gun that would produce this sound, this sensation without, you know, shredding his entire body. I mean, you know, it gets kind of gory, but yeah, that's how.
I think that's so fascinating. We're going to switch gears here a little bit, but what was your goal for writing this book? Did you have one?
Well, thank you. That's a very humble question, and I would never say that I have a goal. I don't. I'm not a message writer. That's not what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, as I said before, trying to understand something about uh, uh, the human experience. That distills to that. And in this novel, I'm really interested in looking at community. I am interested in looking at you know, hatred and between classes and race, not just race in this book. There's also a class distinction and antagonism. So I'm interested in looking at a lot of things, but interested not as a message novel. I don't feel that I've given any answers. I certainly don't have any that I'm aware of. But I guess my goal, if I had to use that word, which isn't really my word, but I would say it's the same goal I have for any, as a reader reading fiction, why I think fiction is so incredibly valuable, is that whatever it is, when we really enter a deeply complex fictional character, we are also capable of a deeper understanding of ourselves, others, and there's the experience of catharsis, you know, and there's something that happens when it's the imagined, for me anyway, and I think many readers, that is quite different than, reading about a hate crime that took place. You get it on CNN, you get it through your Twitter feed, you get it through this, you get it through that, and there's a distancing. But as you said, when I read that first section, you said, I need a minute to recover. Well, fiction doesn't allow you to just, all right, next Twitter, what's Cher up to? I don't know, that dates me a lot, but anyway, whatever. You get the point.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
This is actually my last question. So as I asked this last question, if anyone has any questions that they have thought of or would like to ask, I would ask you now to put it in the chat so we can get that ready. But when you picture the ideal reader of this book, who is it?
It's a humble librarian. It's the Pulitzer Prize Committee, which has already passed. I just better, that spoiler alert is over, right? I just don't have the imagination to come up with an ideal reader. Any reader is ideal. I feel, frankly, in this day and age, with so many, people have so many demands on their time and so much depression. But that, who sits down with a book? Who buys a book, or takes it out of their library? I actually just feel so grateful for readers. You have no idea. It's fantastic. It's wonderful that readers still exist, and then we still have these ways of communicating. Is the best. It's hope.
I'm very happy that I got to read it. Usually I'm a strict mystery fantasy type person. So this was, yes, so this was a little bit out of what I usually read, but I loved it. I really did, Alice. It was wonderful. Obviously not the part, like the topic, but it just the end, like it just made me want to, get right through it and see how it ended. Actually, this is not a question, but I just popped into my head, and if you replay this, you'll probably just see the light bulb go on. But why did you choose to end it the way you did? Why didn't he just go away forever?
Well, he doesn't go away forever. You're talking about Gunther, and this is kind of there may be some people listening who haven't read the book, so I don't really want to, give away the ending. But he revisits this place, and he has, I think, come to terms in many ways. And of course, this is not a Hollywood film, so, there are no tidy, completely, nobody's feelings or trauma, in my mind, gets completely sewn up, all right, they had that trauma, now on to the next, So I did feel that he had gained strength and maybe perspective, maybe not, but I did want him to go on with his life, which he's going to do. He's doing it right now, as a matter of fact.
Yes. All right. Well, I'm all set with my questions, and it looks like we got a few in here now. So the first one is from Jen. She wants to know, how hands-on is your literary agent in general, and also through your novel drafting process? Does he or she cheer you on, or are they a taskmaster?
That's a really nice professional writer's question, and I have a feeling I know this, Jen, so.
Yes, you do.
Well, I am actually tremendously fortunate in my agent, because she took me on with Genius of the World, my first novel. I write only literary fiction, which is almost guaranteed, unless you're one of these writers who has a breakthrough novel, which every agent prays for. Not to mention, the writer is less involved in that, in the sense that, yeah, I'd love to make money, but it's not, if I had that foremost in my mind, then I would have, hung it all up a long time ago. I've actually always promised myself that I would treat my writing as though I were a poet, not expecting to make money, writing only what I need to write. And to find an agent that is comfortable with that was pretty remarkable. So my agent, Miriam Altschuler, has been with me since, from time to time, I say, sorry, Miriam, I know you haven't made a dime off me. I mean, she's made, maybe a little bit, not much, but she stuck with me. And she always just says to me, well, Alice, I believe in your work. I believe in your writing. And this is why I do what I do, to support writers, like to be able to represent writers like you. So she's not particularly hands-on at this point. She reads a draft that usually when I work for a long time, she checks in, we check in fairly. I mean, we're friends at this point, although she doesn't, she lives in New York City. She checks in, says, hi, how you doing? How's the novel going? But she's used to me taking 5 years to write a novel. So, at some point, if I want to show her something, I can, or I can also just say to her, it's not good for me to show it to you now. I just need to work. She's like, fine with that. So I really have I have a very, very, very comfortable and wonderful relationship with my agent. I'm just very fortunate. I mean, on the other hand, she's, there are some very tough, high-powered agents who would be, who knows, in a different lifetime, maybe they would have been better for me, and they might have been, saying, where's the novel? Where's the novel? Hurry up, hurry up. That's not the way I work. So it's been a very, very good relationship for me. But that isn't for everybody. These days, however, to find a agent who will represent literary fiction is near impossible. And it's probably harder to find an agent than it is to publish a first novel at this point. That's the truth. The publishing business is terrible, has been for a long time. And the kind of work I do, I just, it would be very hard. I feel very grateful.
Thanks, Jen. The next question comes from Elizabeth, and she wants to know, did you interview any of the people involved in the actual incident in Cooperstown? Why or why not?
Okay, that's a great question. I have answered this question before in readings in this neck of the woods, because of course, when I read anywhere else, no one is even conscious of there having been this incident in Cooperstown. And I have, very, I think it's pretty brief for me. I hope it's clear to you too. Reasons, no, I did not. And the reason is, this is fiction. In order to create fiction, I have to go whole cloth from my imagination. Now, I read anything that was in public, anything that was a newspaper article or anything that was online, I dipped into. But the difference of writing a novel, even though to some that seems so close to the actual facts, I'd like to use the example of the writer who did, Jon Krakauer, who wrote many things, Into Thin Air or Into the Wild. So he writes novelistically, but he is a journalist. And so when he wrote about, I think it's Into the Wild, where the young man goes off, leaves his family, goes off to live on his own in the wilderness, and ends up dying of starvation. Spoiler alert. And though it feels like you're reading fiction, it isn't. He absolutely scrupulously interviews every single person who is ever involved in that story. Of course, he's also doing research to get all kinds of other details accurate, portray them accurately. But that's a creative nonfiction. That's journalism. Fiction is fiction. I mean, it would be as though you asked Shakespeare, I'm going to go back to Richard III, did you actually talk to Richard III? Did you talk to his brother? Shakespeare's plays, for instance, are historical. I mean, many of them are based on actual historical events, but and had that chronology or had that basic framework. But Richard III's interior, what a novelist does is give themselves permission to create a fictional character of hopefully great complexity. So that's my answer. Yeah. No, I would never do that I never do that when I write. If I interview anyone when I'm doing, when I'm writing a novel, it's simply to do research for details. Like in Lost, there's a search and rescue man. One of the characters is a search and rescue man. After I'd written him, I then went and talked to an actual search and rescue guy and ran some stuff by him. And he was sort of like, how did you know that? How did you know I was divorced? How did you know I'm a vet? How did you know I have chronic bowel syndrome? You know, I was like, I didn't. I just made it up. He was like, oh my God, you know. So this is, you know, that's the process.
Anne-Marie would like to know, how did the Unitarians get into this story?
How do they get? I don't quite understand the question. How do Unitarians get into the story? There is a fictional Unitarian congregation in the story. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Right. So that's a wonderful question too. So in my exploration of community and what may seem to be at first, you know, a sort of, I mean, I am a white liberal, okay? So as a white liberal, there's certain responses expected to a hate crime when this is a white teenager has attacked a Black teenager. Well, as the story unfolds, there is another view. I mean, at first, the view is, you know, completely hostility towards the attacker, the white teenager. And then there's another view is introduced, which I think is very important, that could be looked at as another kind of compassionate view, which is that the white attacker was mentally ill. And so a development of compassion towards that attacker. So again, you know, as a writer, as a novelist, I'm not interested in saying one of these points of view is correct, you know, that you know, lock them up or be compassionate and, you know, look at this as someone with mental illness. That's not my interest. My interest is in understanding how complex this human experience is from all sides, And so in my mind, Unitarians, and this is a blanket statement, are deeply compassionate people. So I thought, let's give it to the Unitarians. You know, it could have been the Presbyterians, it could have been the Temple, it could have been, you know, I went for the Unitarians. Novelist's choice. No, nothing based on any reality. This has not happened in real life, so to speak. This is an invention. Yeah.
Elizabeth would like to know, how much do you think the football rite of passage factored into the crime?
Well, again, I don't want to leave people who haven't read the novel, you know, wondering, a what? Factored into the actual crime. No, that's you know, these are very.
We didn't prep you for these.
No. I mean, these are really, really good questions. I don't, you know, there's no how much in my mind. The white teenager was assaulted, sexually assaulted, and that was a traumatic experience. How much? I mean, this is a young man. You read the book, and there's lots of trauma in this book, you know, and for everyone gets their share. Even the pit bull. No. So, you know, I can't. It's part of a complex understanding or attempt at understanding this character. It's not a how much. It's part of, you know, the entire experience of the character.
Jessica would like to know, can you speak more to the way you described how you lean into and listen to the different voices? You mentioned synchronicity and
Mm.
leaning into a place of compassion. Do the characters become real and thus easier to differentiate the voices? It's the end of the
Mm.
day. Get a little tongue-tied. Sorry, I butchered your
No,
question,
no, no.
Jessica.
Thank you. Another wonderful question. The characters are always differentiated. It's I'm trying to think how to explain this. I mean, writers work, of course, very differently. I would say that I'm a writer who works first through language. Some writers work first through image or visual, and um, as I allow myself permission to start writing this person's point of view, I start to hear the rhythms, the voice. I feel less in control. I'm not sort of feel like I'm artificially making it sound a certain way. I um, I try to somehow. Again, it is hard to explain, but it's also the kind of the fruit of many years of writing. You know, I've been writing for at least 40 years. So you get to a certain point where you trust your process. In my case, it's hearing the language that a character is using. Um, and I follow that I follow that down the rabbit hole, basically. Um, and I know that's not super clear, but and again, it may be that I'm seeing that character in a scene. There's a scene where Sean Sr. is getting getting a slice of pizza at a quick stop. I just suddenly I feel I'm in that skin. I can navigate. But also I've been to a lot of quick stops and I've gotten a lot of greasy pizza myself and loved it.
I think this is an excellent question to end this wonderful talk. But Jen would like to know, are you working on your next novel now or not yet?
Jen is evil. I don't I don't know if it's the same Jen, but if it is.
I do believe it is. There's only one Jen in here, so.
Well, I am this time I'll admit to being very slow, partly because I'm giving myself the ultimate permission, which is that a lot of work is being done on this novel completely in my unconscious. I know it's happening, but I'm not putting anything down yet. And part of that reason is, as everyone here knows, I mean, we're in such an unbelievably difficult historical time. It's so many things are happening that never, certainly in my lifetime, or my dad's 98, he's never experienced anything like this. So it's a big question to me as a novelist, as an artist in any capacity. How do you respond to something happening on this level in any meaningful way? I mean, not message, but still to have something that really seems like it would be worth anybody's time to read, frankly. So that's a little bit of a hang up for me. And I have been reading Russian novels under, Stalinist writers, not Stalinists, but writers who are writing under Stalin and being executed by Stalin. But hey, and I think I am really giving myself a period to study how writers do respond to rising fascist regimes. She said not being political, but hey, no, being political. I mean, so that's a lot's going on in my head. Yeah.
Excellent. Alice, thank you so much. This has been wonderful. And I hope everyone has enjoyed this little talk that we've been planning for weeks and weeks. So
well, I thank you, and may I just invite people. I have a Facebook page for The Crime of Being, if you're still doing Facebook. I totally understand if you're not. I applaud you. And if you feel you have some questions that you really would like to have answered, I will try my best. you can email me at Lichtenstein A for Alice, at Hartwick, like Hartwick College, .edu.
Putting it in the chat, so if anyone wants to copy it.
And thank you for wonderful questions from both the, I'm sorry, I'm going to beat this to, you know, like a dead horse, no, but you're a wonderfully humble librarian, making Huntington Memorial Library proud.
Oh, thank you so much. Tina, do you hear that? I'm just kidding.
And I'm really, 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 thank you so much. Tina, I see you there, even though you're muted. Thanks so much for you know, having this wonderful series. It's great. I'm looking forward to tuning in on the next one.
Yes. Hurry up and write your next book so we can talk about it. No pressure.
That sounds like Miriam. That sounds like Miriam, my agent.
All right. Thank you so much, everybody, and hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.